This podcast is also available via stagelink.com, the groundbreaking new platform for live performing arts. Please support the podcast by liking, subscribing, commenting, and tagging the podcast. It helps us to continue to bring the industry high level content. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, and today on the Circuspreneur Podcast, I'm joined by circus parent and now advocate, Katie Hill. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. And listeners, today's episode is a serious and important conversation. I'm joined by Katie Hill, a parent who is speaking out after her daughter was injured during aerial training and rehearsal. What happened raised difficult questions about safety, oversight, and accountability in youth circus and aerial programs. This episode isn't about speculation or blame. It's about listening, learning, and understanding what families experience when safety standards fall short. I want to give Katie the space to share her story in her own words and to talk about the advocacy she's pursuing so other children are better protected. And I want to thank everyone for listening and for listening with care. And Katie, I'm really grateful to have you on the podcast. It's not every day that we are able to speak to a circus parent or an aerial arts parent. Unfortunately, during such difficult times, it can be a challenge to speak about a situation involving one's child that is so challenging and traumatizing, and we know that it's not super easy for parents to engage sometimes around these conversations. There was quite a big accident that happened this past year involving Circus Mercus, and we discussed that on the podcast as well, and discussed behind the scenes with a few parents that were interacting and connected to that incident. But it's very, I think we're fortunate to have you here speaking in your own words so that people can relate, so that listeners can really understand what a family faces when their child has an accident of this nature. So, to get into, what occurred, within your daughter's accident, Katie, can you take us into that day and what your experience was like and what exactly happened?
Sure. So this occurred in May of 2024. So my daughter was getting ready to perform at a recital at her previous studio, and they were going through rehearsals. And at this particular studio, they did not use crash mats when they were rehearsing or performing over their stage. That was also located inside the studio. So she was rehearsing on that stage, and they had already run through their dance, as they called it. It was like a group piece, and they wanted to run through it again. And so I happened to be nearby because I thought the rehearsal was going to be over, and then they were still running through it, so I wasn't able to reach her at the time, but at least I was nearby. So she was already fatigued. She had attended a rehearsal the night previous to that, so this time she was rehearsing again the next night. It was also the last week of school that year, so she was just very tired. So having run through, it was a very complex dance. It had a lot of drops and other types of items within it, so it was physically exhausting. So there was one drop that she was wrapped to do, and there was about 3 wraps on her left leg that she had wrapped. But as she was coming out of the drop, so she had wrapped up to the ceiling, essentially, to where the rigging was. And then so as she was coming out of the drop, one of the wraps on her leg slipped off, and this caused her body to come out of the silks. And so she fell flat on her face on the bare floor. And so, due to the height of the drop, and the way she impacted. She blacked out, lost consciousness. And when I had come in, so I got a call that, something had happened. So since I was nearby, I was able to come right in. And she had come back too, but she was still on the floor. So it had just happened. I came in on the scene of her face covered in blood. She had, she was kind of holding her teeth, just concerned with her teeth, but she was still not fully conscious. So I heard someone say something about urgent care. So I thought, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to get her to an ER. So it just, was very tunnel vision at that moment. Like I just, to get her and everything out. Somebody at that point asked, do you want to call an ambulance? I later found out from a parent who had witnessed the accident that the staff at the studio said that they weren't allowed to call an ambulance. So that was really concerning. So that's why they asked me, because I was there at the time, and then they're like, okay, we can ask her, but I was already there. So I was her ambulance. So she was kind of repeating herself, the concussion was taking effect. She kept saying the same thing over and over again. It's just, she had braces on at the time, but the braces had broken. Some had come off her front teeth. There was just a lot of blood, so it was really hard to tell exactly what was going on. Got her to the ER. They did all the scans. So she had fortunately not broken anything, any bones in her face, other than the bridge of her nose was very shattered. Her septum was kind of to a 90-degree angle. She had dislocated her AC joint in her left shoulder, and we suspect, because she had some silk burns on her left wrist, that she was reaching up to grab herself as she was falling. But she doesn't remember, since she lost consciousness, and her mind kind of wiped that out. So we just assumed that's what happened, and that's what pulled her arm out. So she needed a sling for that. And so then that just kind of started the timeline. So I had to get her into the orthodontist the next day to fix her braces. She did have one of her front teeth was loose. Later, we discovered through the dentist that that the nerves had died in her two front teeth. So 4 of her top front teeth had been affected. Had she not been wearing braces, they probably would have been knocked out of her mouth. So she needed root canals on those 2 front teeth. And, that's an experience, watching your child's nerves get pulled out of her teeth. So that was unfortunate, but at least we were able to save those teeth. So within a week, I had to get her in for surgery on her nose, because timing was everything. So they rebuilt her nose. They had to reset all the bones. And so she had that. And then she also had physical therapy for several weeks that summer for her shoulder. She had to have the KT tape on for a really long time, along with the physical therapy. A year later, she was still dealing with it. She still deals with that shoulder kind of slipping out, because once something's injured, it's compromised. So she's probably going to deal with that shoulder for the rest of her life. Of course, her teeth now don't have nerves. So hopefully we can, deal with that. The nose surgery was pretty successful. But, then there was that concern about her brain. So I just recently had her go in for an MRI. Her doctor had ordered an MRI for her brain. And it did come back showing some, signs in the frontal lobe of prior trauma. So she's got an appointment with her neurologist, or with a neurologist next month, just to kind of get their perspective on if there's any long-term issues. So that's something still that we don't know, if from that injury, she's going to have some lasting effects with her brain. If there's any TBI, we'll find out. um,
Hmm.
yeah. So, the other things too, there was just those small injuries, like I was mentioning, that were associated with that fall as well, like the burns, the burn on her wrist. The impact was so hard on her face that her jawbone was pushed up into her, like basically up into her ears, like so she couldn't like clear her
Hmm.
ears, things like that. The chiropractor was able to move it back, thank goodness. But it just
Hmm.
shows how hard of an impact that was. So the whole thing too takes a psychological effect. So I got her in therapy for about 6 months, just to kind of process what happened. Because there's no doubt some PTSD that she was experiencing. Um, she did get back up into the silks a month after her accident. She's very committed to this sport, and she's still doing it now in a new studio. They take safety very seriously at her new place. That's part of the reason we decided to join, and they're also very legitimate. As an aerial studio, so she still does it. And when she first got up in the silks, it was just that her mind was like back in that place, and a lot of those things were reminding her. um, I don't think she experiences that as much now, because
Hmm.
she's definitely she's different now. This was a life-changing event. This was something that she's probably going to have effects from for the rest of her life. But as far as like a parent as well, yeah, it was hard to see her get back in the silks. I remember my husband couldn't even watch. It was, it was hard to see, and um, just kind of putting our minds back into that place where that happened and stuff. But I was realizing after 1 year post her accident, like last May it would be, um, that I was also having some, probably what they call, I guess, secondary PTSD.
Hmm.
A lot of stuff was affecting me, and it was almost like at that point it was hitting me harder in a way. Just the
Hmm.
psychological effects, obviously not the physical. Um,
Hmm.
but so then I sought therapy as well, because I feel like I needed to process what happened, because in the moment everything was just so like time sensitive, and just get her to this, get her to surgery, get her to the dentist, get her, and like
Hmm.
just trying to take care of all those things for her to help her with her recovery. And I didn't have time to process what really happened, and just to kind of grasp the idea that, had she fallen in a different way, had that drop been different, where they sometimes drops, and you would know the specific names for them, but where it's straight down, where she's directly upside down, she could have landed straight on her head. She could have broke her neck. She could have been paralyzed. She could have been brain dead. She could have died. So
Hmm.
all these things obviously were very preventable, if the just basic safety measures were used.
Hmm.
The idea that she could have died without, if like, let's say I hadn't been able to, uh, respond or show up as fast as I did. What if it was worse?
Hmm.
And all those what ifs could have been a very big possibility in scenarios just like this, where,
Hmm.
they weren't able to call 911. They weren't able to call an ambulance, and she could have passed away, like, without any emergency measures being taken either. So it's a lot of that what ifs that obviously we're very, very lucky didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it was bad enough that, we have to look at all of the damage that was done already, that, yeah, she healed, and she's so fortunate to have healed and still able to do aerial and to do what she loves and be a normal kid. But I don't know about how many kids would be as lucky. And
Hmm.
these studios who decide to add aerial into their programs need to be able to, need to take those measures, because we are trusting as parents, the safety of our kids, and we're putting it in their hands. And
Hmm.
it's such a violation of trust, when you assume everything is being done that should be, when it
Right.
comes to safety. um,
Hmm.
Had this been, I know we're trying to advocate for this to be recognized with safe sport, or like, just to have that as more of a regulated activity. I would have loved to have been able to report them and have them investigated and have that program banned, until they were able to take those measures. So the fact that we're not able to do that, it doesn't hold them accountable. And for something
Hmm.
so serious, they really should be. Um,
Right.
yeah. So I don't know if I'm missing anything, but I think that about captures the story for the most part. It's just one of those things where it's, you know the accident or your accident, and that's always going to be something that we talk about in our family, and it's going
Hmm.
to be something that, you know I mean, of course, my daughter is now a stronger person, but a lot of that derives from trauma, and
Mm.
I hate that that happened, and I hate that
Right.
that's how she derived her strength. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's we can't change what happened. So for me, being able to be here and talk to you today, and to be able to advocate for safety in this activity, and to hopefully prevent this from happening to someone else's child, is, I feel like, the best way I can, you know, participate in this. It's, um,
Well, we're
it was
thankful.
a big thing
Yeah,
that happened to us.
it was a very big thing and very serious. And thank you for sharing all of the different aspects to this story and to the incident and what happened and the aftermath and your perspective and how it affects everyone involved and how this is something that will be a part of your daughter's life for the rest of her life. I think I'm, just so grateful that she was fortunate to have you there right away. When this environment, because I think it's important, like what you noted, Katie, this was a dance studio that started an aerial arts or aerial sport program, right? And that is one of the things that we speak about a lot on this podcast and a lot through advocacy, is that many programs spring up, unfortunately or fortunately, for financial gain, where they see that adding an additional program can really help their business. However, they don't have the adequate training, they don't have the adequate protocol, and they don't have the adequate coaches to support these programs. And unfortunately, that falls on the parents who would not know that, right? Because of the lack of regulations around these environments. We all would assume that our child is going to be safe within these activities. They all seem legitimate, they're legitimate businesses. But then once you get to look deeper, or in the case for you, an accident happens that is preventable. What did they say to you, Katie, about not calling an ambulance when a child has suffered such a big and serious accident within their business, within their space? How did they afterwards communicate that? And then also, too, is that anything that you sought any legal ramifications around for your family, or how did that, I would say, get handled, or how did you guys address that?
So they actually never talked to me about that. It just makes it even worse.
Oh,
Um, I found out from the parent who had witnessed the fall.
then
She
that was
is,
it.
yeah, she said that she coaches tackle football. So she was kind of doing her normal screening for concussion, like she does with her athletes, when she, you know, came over to my daughter after she fell. And that's when she told me later that they told her they couldn't call an ambulance. I also don't remember ever signing a waiver.
Mm.
So, you know, I'm assuming, of course, that with dance, they don't necessarily need to sign a waiver. I mean, I would think waivers are probably a good idea for anything, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe they just didn't think about it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
speculating, but
Mm-hmm.
I just really
Mm-hmm.
don't remember signing a waiver. Of course, with her current studio, we sign waivers all the time. Like, so I mean, so that's why I mean, that's my frame of reference. It's like, why did you not have me sign a waiver? Because she's done other activities where I sign on the line that says, you're allowed to call an ambulance on our behalf. um, and then you provide your medical information, like your insurance and your primary care doctor and all that stuff. So that would have been nice if we were able to provide that for them in that case, because then it would have been a different scenario. It would have been, she had a fall, we called the ambulance, they're on their way, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's what I would have loved to have heard instead of
Right.
what actually happened. So as far as legal things, we did talk to a personal injury lawyer, and we just had decided not to pursue a lawsuit. I mean, although everyone we talked to says, "Oh, you should sue them."
Yeah.
um,
It's my advice as well. Sue them.
yeah,
But many parents don't actually. And I think to remind everyone, from the amount of stories and incidents that I have learned of over the years, many families do not sue in these cases. They do not. They they move on, and they either do not continue the sport or the activity, or they move on to a place that they find is where they should have been all along. But we don't know that because we don't know what we don't know until we're in a better space. And this is the work of the advocacy and in informing parents and informing individuals that want to get into these programs that are wonderful when they're regulated well. But this is the issue of everyone lacking the cohesive information across the board, and why we think that policy is what will fix this, because then they will have to do this on a lawful level. It will be mandated, and they can't just make up whatever they want to on the fly, which is what most programs are doing. And people don't like hearing that, but it's the truth. And it shouldn't take a child having such a severe injury for folks to think that we should have these mandates. You shouldn't have to risk your child's safety in going to a program where they should have to abide by certain regulations and laws to protect your child at all times. And that shouldn't be the work of the parents to have to constantly investigate these spaces to know what they're doing properly. You're obviously very involved parents, very engaged, very smart and intelligent people. It's not your fault when a business is doesn't even have to be compliant within certain um, regulatory ways. They just don't have to be. And unfortunately, as well, when there is also no database or there's nothing else that you can keep track of these incidences, they can have several of these, like what happened to your daughter, and nothing will ever come of it. If it doesn't make the news, no one will ever really know. People will continue to bring their children there. Unfortunately, they won't get shut down. And that's actually more common than not. And so that's also too why I brought up the other story, because we need to discuss the stories that don't make the news, like your daughter's story. I don't think that your daughter's story was reported in the news. It doesn't sound like there was even, the police were called. So there maybe wasn't a police report that was involved with this either. Was or CPS, which is another, kind of avenues that sometimes we've suggested parents go down, right, in terms of child endangerment. But again, these spaces get away with so much. So I'm sorry. Can you please discuss a little bit more of why you didn't want to pursue a personal injury lawsuit?
it wasn't something that we had said, no, there's no way we're not going to sue. I mean, I
Mhm.
personally would have wanted to see that part of the program shut down
Hmm.
or her whole business overall. Because, obviously there was a lot of anger, um, that just into their lack of safety protocols, their just negligence in that regard. And I'm assuming things, but they would have the mats for just when they're training, and they would have the mats for the small kids. But it was where the more advanced level kids, it became part of the culture there that they wouldn't have mats when they were rehearsing and performing. And I don't know if it may have been because the facility itself was not accommodating. It's a small building. The ceilings aren't as high as you would see most of the time in like aerial studios. So that caused issues as well, especially for kids that are a bit taller. My daughter is on the taller side. So, they have a lot of restrictions when it comes to like how they're able to do their drops, and then, getting closer to the floor and things like that when they're, unraveling. Um,
Hmm.
just because they're bigger. So there was a lot of things that weren't there in this whole idea of like, well, I'm too good for a mat, and so like if they had to use a mat, the more advanced uh, students would think that was like an insult or something, and it was just a very strange culture that was you know perpetuated there. And
Hmm.
so yeah, I just in general, I just don't think that they should be allowed to continue operating. I mean, you can go right on their website, and they have this running. It's like a loop video on the aerial programs page of them performing on that stage where my daughter fell, and it's bare. So they're just so boldly ignoring safety so much that they're going to put it on their website. And so those are the things I would have liked to have just seen change. And so I guess for us, the financial gain of suing wasn't really as much of a problem as it was, or issue for us, or a goal for us. It was more just like, this shouldn't have happened. And just the anger surrounding the fact that, yeah, like you said, it was very obvious that she's adding these things in, the director of the studio,
Hmm.
she's adding these things in to just make more money. And then is just increasing that requirement. Like around the time of her accident, she was already adding in more requirements just to participate in the aerial program, thereby trying to get more money from the parents, and just to like add the amount of hours that they were, having to be at the studio, and stuff like that. So it was just
Hmm.
overall not something that I was happy about at all, and it was very angering. We did get contacted by our insurance, um, from the initial ER invoice, that said that they weren't going to cover anything until we provided information on the third party, because the nature of the injuries to them looked like there would be a third party liability.
Hmm.
So I happily provided information about the studio and the contact and all that. And so I think that may have helped a little as far as our insurance bills, our bills from the surgery and things like that, because they may have also charged the studio's insurance. I'm not sure, but it seemed that
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
um, so that was at least one thing that did happen. So I don't know. I guess for us, it was just kind of that, just the effort it would have taken, the time, potentially
Hmm.
even legal fees for us that we would have incurred trying to sue. Um,
Hmm.
it's just very exhausting. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably why we didn't pursue that more aggressively.
Hmm.
Although I know we do, and we definitely did have a case to
Oh,
sue.
yes.
So
Definitely, I think you
yeah,
had a case. But
have
it
yeah.
also looks towards, why. why parents and why families don't. And I understand why you didn't. It's exhausting. You have your child to focus on, getting her, back into the state that she can be the best um, little person as. I've seen her videos. She's amazing and she's wonderful. And, I think it's also a testament to the care that your family provided in getting her back and having her feel safe and knowing that she can still pursue her aerial arts or her aerial sports program. We're kind of getting down to the last of the podcast here, Katie. And so I wanted to talk just a little bit about your time in advocating. We did have you file a report with the Center for Safe Sport. I do want to tell folks, which many are seeing, many arts programs are adopting safe sport protocol, which is wonderful. But what we wanted to show, which is also important, is that these spaces, even now, people might think I can file a report with the center because they're using safe sport protocol. That is not necessarily the case, but it is important to file a report with the center so that they have it on record that an environment like yours, where your daughter was injured, exists and should be notated, and so that there is a record for it. And then also to seeing the resources that they offer back. So I'm so glad that you did that, and you took that initiative as well, Katie, to get that on record. The other thing was participating with congressional meetings with congressional representatives in your district, in the district of the studio, and how important that was to hear your story firsthand, your experience, and then also to what proactive changes you would like to see. Can you discuss a little bit about your time in the meeting, Katie, and the importance that you can see in advocating for policies like Safe Art and Safe Circus, which we are pursuing, which would be a division by the U.S. Center for Safe Sport with your local members of Congress to get some more eyes and ears on these spaces to make sure that they are safe and that they also do have basic safety measures that are mandated, not recommendations and not cultural community insights or support systems, but actual laws to protect kids in the sports and the art forms that they love to do and that parents want to see them do and thrive in safely.
Yeah, that is definitely something I would love to see. I would have loved to have been able to report and know that it was going to get investigated. It was going to be handled at that level.
Mhm.
Because certainly I would expect that that program would have been banned shut down at that studio. Um, so yeah, and you wanted me to reflect on the meeting with the
Yes.
Congress. And,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that was really good for them to hear firsthand from from a parent, me, who had gone through that with their kid. I think some of the takeaways that they had, they emphasized was just the fact that, a lot of parents too don't have the ability to take their kid from, where like our studio before was just in town with us, nearby, to driving nearly an hour to where she goes now. And so that's not an option that a lot of people have. So that I think was also something that they felt was important, that, these programs are more regulated. So that way families do have that opportunity to put their kids in these things if they want to do it, and where it's not a burden on the family.
Mhm.
So I think I remember that. And just overall, I think it was impactful for them to hear really the result of there not being regulation, right? And like, and I know that my case isn't the only one. Um,
Mhm.
and that's the scary thing about it, is that how much is happening right now, and how many studios are adding these programs.
Right.
And it seems to be a very popular thing among
Mhm.
younger, or young kids and stuff. They want to do it. So there is a need for it, or a motivation to add those kinds of programs. So yeah, I think that was probably the biggest takeaway. I don't know if you remember some other ones too, but yeah, they seem to really pick up on that. That it was like kind of an added burden on us now, even though we're committed to supporting our daughters. And,
Yes. Hmm.
daughter's dream to be in the aerial arts. So, yeah.
Yes, they were very, very much impacted by your statement and by, your experience with your daughter. They responded so positively to your story. Obviously, they responded in a very serious manner, but I think that sharing firsthand accounts for offices so that they really know these are your constituents. They exist every single day. They are in your backyard, and it is your responsibility to take care of them and to know that these incidents are happening in your district and that you can do something about it directly to affect another child's life, another experience, another family's experience, and then also to protecting your daughter for the rest of her career. Because what we want to do with these particular bills and protocols is not only just in the youth space, but you're protected throughout your entire career, starting from when you're young. So if you go from that space, you can continue to thrive if you want to take it further, or if you want to continue to just even stay a hobbyist. But this is something that you want to do for the rest of your life. You should feel safe at any stage that you are participating in the aerial arts or the circus arts or aerial sport, as they call it as well. All these many facets that these are turning into that we are also too trying to catch a hold of because, like you were saying, it's so popular and we want children to be involved in these activities. We don't want kids on their screens all day. We don't want them on their phones and on their tablets. We want them to be in these environments. For all of you out there that are running these programs or that are business owners, right? This is not, again, about saying that these programs should not exist, but these are programs that are great. They're wonderful. They do so much, especially during these times where, children don't have the same access to things as we did previously, right? And they're affecting, children's development and all sorts of things. So we want them in these programs, but we also want them to be safe. And we want the parents to feel like they can trust the spaces that they're going into, and that these environments can't just pop up whenever they want to, and then play by their own rules. It doesn't work. It creates very unsafe environments. And I really appreciate you, Katie, for taking out the time, for participating in the congressional meetings, for providing your statement and your feedback, and for being public about a very challenging and difficult time in your family's life that you are still dealing with now. This incident happened in 2024, and this is now 2026, and you are still going through getting MRIs, having checkups, and then, seeing how your daughter is thriving internally as well as externally. So the impacts are long lasting, and no family should have to go through this in order to have their child in an activity that they can excel at and that they love to do. So I just really appreciate again your time. And I continue to wish your family well and your daughter. And I hope that she is able to continue to soar and live out all of her dreams in the aerial arts. And thank you for continuing to advocate because we need strong voices like yours as a circus parent that is, and we know it's not easy, but is willing to speak up, to speak to our legislatures, and then also to just to share the impacts that this has on families so that you can make it better. Because as everyone sees, you didn't take your daughter out of aerial arts. You could have, but your response was no, let's just find the right space and find the right place because they are out there as well. And those good places can also to help support, the parents that are, don't know where to go. And they are important guideposts for other families, and I hope that they all take that role very seriously, because they should, and I know many of them do. So I don't want to be patronizing, but thank you so much again, Katie, for everything that you're doing.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This Circuspreneur podcast is also available on stagelink.com, stagelync.com, the groundbreaking new platform for live performing arts that provides unmatched access and connection to this vibrant world of shows and entertainment. If you're a professional in the performing arts, visit stagelink.com/pro. StageLink Pro, StageLyncPro, offers industry professionals higher visibility, networking opportunities, and tools to support and enhance their careers. Until next time, everyone, please stay safe and stay healthy. And please tune in to the next episode of the Circuspreneur Podcast. And thank you again to circus parent and advocate, Katie Hill.